Speaker's Corner. I don't know what day it is. Last Sunday in June, sorry. 26th.
Yes.
And this guy's been telling me some very interesting, telling us some very interesting things about the very beginnings of geoengineering, and some guy called, what was his name again? You'll have to fill me in again.
James Pollard Ipsy.
Right.
He was a scientist that claimed you can actually get rain or start rain by having a contained forest fire. That was back in 1860. He wrote a book called Philosophy of Storms. And of course he was ridiculed because his idea was you start a contained rainforest, and then the vapor coming out of this rainforest fire, or forest fire, doesn't necessarily have to be a rainforest, but a condensed forest, would go up in the atmosphere to the colder areas, and then it would condensate to make clouds. He tried to convince a lot of people to go through the experiment. Of course he was ridiculed back at his time by 90% of the scientists, and he actually got someone to believe in his researches and to fund it, which was the US Navy back then. Unfortunately, during his time, he never really managed to make that happen, even though he worked for the US Navy and got funded for about 11 years. And afterwards, 30 years after he came up with this idea, the very first Rain Man experiment took place actually in New Zealand. I don't recall the area's name exactly, but it was considered at the time to be the driest area on planet Earth. And a lot of people were trying to settle in New Zealand and were having problems with agriculture, with the rain, with rarity of water. So they decided they would like to try something similar to his idea. But of course, since it does not really rain, there are no forests. So the idea was to actually spread a lot of gunpowder across an area like 1 square kilometer, and then send balloons that are filled with oxygen and hydrogen, if I remember correctly, up in the sky around like a kilometer or a mile up, and also send big kites that actually have gunpowder in them, so that they can start an explosion in the sky, like, about a kilometer to a mile high, and that explosion would get the fire to go on the ground with the gunpowder, which immediately creates a very hot area in between this virtual cube, which leads to the condensation, or the evaporation, sorry, of vapor from that area to go up to the colder layers of the atmosphere, bringing the condensation, making the clouds, and it was successful. A lot of people tried to copy the experiment afterwards, but for many different factors, like the strength of wind or the humidity or any other factors. Sometimes it didn't work, sometimes it actually made the clouds happen, but it didn't rain immediately, like it would be sent to a different area. And that's where the Rain Man came from in the 1890s up to 1900s in California and in the US when they were facing droughts. That's what I could tell you about this from the research I've done so far. The book again is called The Philosophy of Storms by James
I will check that
Pollard.
out. I mean, as I said to some guys before, you know, to have patents that go back to 1915, which I believe was the earliest patent for this actual chemtrailing stuff, the idea will have been thought about in something, 18-something or other.
Yes,
you know.
definitely.
And then my little book that I've got here, my little book.
Of course, it's not little, it's full of a lot of knowledge.
Well, it's Weather and Climate Modification. It dates to the 70s, and it talks about what they were doing in the 50s and the 60s, you know, experiments with weather, cloud seeding. It's been going on for absolutely ages. And, you know, as I said to the other people, and I said to you before, in the right hands, a little bit can be very useful. You know, if a country has a serious drought on, we can help them out.
Definitely.
You know, if there's a hurricane heading towards a highly populated area, we can deflect it.
Of course we can.
But
by creating the right weather circumstances, which has for decades now been available, but not commercially available, not for the public. Of course, again, the very first organization that funded James Pollard Ipsy and was interested not for the of humanity or greatness of humanity and for helping others was the US Navy, because they immediately realized this could be weaponized.
Yeah. Oh,
this
yeah.
could be our advantage.
Yeah.
Like, we can cause floods, we can cause catastrophes, and make sure economies fall and countries are in serious conditions without having to send one troop on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Now, has this been used like on a large scale? Not yet, because we still see armies going on grounds. We still
I believe,
see, but
I don't know too much about Operation Popeye, but that happened in Vietnam. That was used.
I'm not very familiar with it.
I think that was a flooding of the country, I believe. I need to check it out myself.
I actually believe the floods in Pakistan, I think that was in somewhere between 2007 to 2009. They were actually artificially induced. And as a matter of fact, a lot of claims have surfaced that during the war on Afghanistan, the Geo-engineering was used to dry up the waters, like the earth water, I'm not sure what you call it, like water in the earth, underneath the earth, around the Tora Bora mountains to force those who are hiding in there to actually come out. So there are a lot of interesting claims. Some have solid evidences, some don't, but the most solid of all is the science already existed.
Oh, yes.
Over a decade ago.
Try telling that to today's geoengineers, though. It is unbelievable. I've been to a couple of sort of conferences. I have to pay to go in, you know. And you speak to these guys, they give talks about climate engineering and what we need to do to control the extremes of weather that they've created. And, you know, they absolutely lie through their teeth and they say, we're working with climate models.
Okay.
And they stick to that, of course. But when you confront them in the intervals, you know, and you go up to them and you talk about they're planning to block the sun on a climate where we don't really see much sun, you know. I mean, today we've got a bit of sun, but it's been grey out and heavy storms and lashing rain here for the last 3 days.
It's officially the summer.
Oh, well, yeah, let's just mention that. It is the summer. It's now about, I've got my coat on today to keep me warm.
June.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, brought my coat and the umbrella.
I'm still trying to pretend it is.
Yeah, yeah.
It really isn't.
So it's and the thing is they just say we're planning to do it. But I've actually got a picture I took of one of the talks, and on the slide projection, one of the disadvantages, one of the things to think about, weaponization of use of making use of it as a weapon could be a problem. And there were many other things that he listed as a problem. But the fact is they've been doing it. This is the thing. They've been doing it. And it's great to meet people. I've been here now, coming here for months. Must be a year, 2 years maybe, 18 months.
Very persistent, I respect that.
Well, last Sunday of the month, we don't come every Sunday, but you know, sometimes I have other commitments, family commitments, and I can't be here. But there's been a change in that 18 months. People now don't think we're absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I know.
The policeman there,
how that works.
that policeman there,
Yeah.
him on his bike, he is amazing. He is with us.
Great.
And he's into fracking and all sorts of stuff. And there's one of the members of the public talking to me before who said, I don't believe you're a policeman, he said. People like you do not talk about this stuff, and they certainly don't agree with the likes of us. This is a guy who's actually a plane engineer, and we've run into him a few times before, actually, but he's quite friendly today, the engineer guy.
Because there's some sun out.
Well, I think he was feeling a little bit the odd man out because the policeman was on our side.
All right.
And he was like, oh, gosh, you know, maybe there's something in it after all, because people are being outnumbered. No, not really. There's millions and millions in London, and they're unaware of what's going on, sadly.
I very much understand where you're coming from.
But there is a shift. There is a shift, though.
True.
And I've seen this shift. I mean, I was here last month, and I did 3 interviews with people, all awake, been watching what's going on, know what's going on, and the wider agenda as well. And it's really...
On that note, if I may interrupt, I'll just tell one thing to the skeptics.
Right.
If you don't believe that the chemtrails in the sky have not been there, if you don't believe there's something that is alien to the sky, if you think they're jet trails, I'm not even going to discuss like the difference between chemtrails and condensation trails. Not at the moment. I'll just tell you one thing. Look at drama, and I mean movies, series, anything that is visual from the times like before the 90s and the 80s.
Yep.
I bet you all the money I have in my bank account, they're not that much, but they would be useful. You're not going to find a single chemtrail in any of those. But look past the 2000, you'll see them. And
Well,
if
actually,
you've seen Breaking Bad, it's been in a lot of
I can
action
actually
scenes.
disagree with you there, only because they're now tampering with film.
Okay.
There's a film called The Railway Children, which came out many, many years ago. It could be the 60s, maybe?
Okay.
And it's a lovely, delightful little story set in the times of steam travel. And the children were sitting on a fence, you know, the sky was beautiful blue, not a cloud. They've now subtly inserted a chemtrail in there.
Oh.
Oh, yes.
The famous X's in the US.
No, they couldn't really do that because that would be too obvious, but they've just put a chemtrail in. So someone has said to the powers that be, I want you to go through old film footage and stick chemtrails in because this is part of normal skies.
Okay, since that is the case, and thank you for bringing my attention to that, I can tell right now what the difference between a condensation trail and a chemtrail for the skeptics is. Simply, a condensation trail is what you usually see behind any jets or any commercial airplane that is traveling in high altitudes.
Yeah.
Because the heat from the engine is causing this condensation of vapor around where the heat is. You would see it following the actual plane, but not continuous, as in not remaining in its place. It follows it where it goes. It's usually like probably around 5 to 6 times the size of the actual plane, depending on the engine size, and it moves with the plane. A chemtrail is something that is still left in the sky hours after that plane has passed. Look, and when you see the difference, start asking the questions. Are those people right? Do they know something that I should be interested in and should be researching? We're not saying they're facts. Forget what we're saying. Maybe we're saying they're facts, but it's our opinion. Just look at it, decide if it's worth a research, look at those triggers. If it's not for the matter of fact that it's your future, it's the future of your children, your grandchildren, and we could be nutcases, but you want the best for them, don't you?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for your time. It's been very informative and I hope people can benefit from what you've said, and I will myself check that stuff out as well.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much indeed. And I will give you a flyer if I need to give it to someone else.
Definitely.
Okay, thanks.